My name's Anthony. It's June 2021 in Toronto, and welcome to Taking It to the Streets with our second episode, The Queen is Dead.
Have a fear of after dark.
Toronto's an amazing live music city. They're just going to come back.
My introduction to Queen West was when I was in my early teens.
1993, I moved to the city when I was 18. I lived Queen and Shaw and then Queen and Noble.
In the 90s, this was the strip to play in. Like, you had to break if you break Toronto.
It's what's happening currently in our political climate over the past 3-4 years has literally been, and Dead Kennedy's lyric sheet has come to fucking life, right in front of your eyes.
Queen Street, Toronto is hands down all things arts, culture, cuisine, live music, dance, fashion, retail, tattoo parlors, hair salons, and has been Toronto's go-to for nightlife spanning over decades. Queen Street is home to so many historic buildings with so much colorful street life, and is forever changing. It's nestled between the financial district and the residential neighborhoods, and she runs from Yonge Street all the way down to Roncesvalles Village. Now, like any other major hub in the city, it's been undergoing change due to pressure for growth from property proprietors and industry. Now, with such a wide range of different ethnic cuisines, club life like no other in the city, live stages, the best in fabric and fashion, shows and booze, win or lose, it's definitely one of the backbone communities in this city. But our Queen Street has a little bit of a history behind her as well.
For Queen Street as we know it, most of the land originally sits on the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Chippewa First Nations. Once the Brits arrived, the original survey was in 1793 by Sir Alexander Atkin. Now, Queen Street up until this point was referred to as Lot Street up until about 1837. That's when they named it after their beloved queen, Victoria. Queen West refers to a collection of neighborhoods that have developed along the street over the years. Many of these were originally ethnically based neighborhoods. From the mid-19th century was Clairtown, an Irish immigrant enclave in the area of Queen Street West and Bathurst Street. From the 1890s until the 1930s, Jewish immigrants rose in the neighborhood known as the Ward, which was located on Queen Street between Yonge and University. The intersections of Queen and Bay Street also served as the southern end of the thriving Chinatown in the 1930s. From the 1920s to the 1950s, the area was the heart of Toronto's Polish and Ukrainian communities as well. As times moved on, gentrification over the years has caused most recent immigrants to gradually move towards affordable areas of the city as less desirability of the area drives up the prices. One of the best known landmarks on this section of Queen Street West was the broadcasting hub at 299 Queen Street West, formerly the headquarters of City TV and Much Music, and earlier the site of the Ryerson Press, now housing the broadcasting operations of a number of television outlets owned by Bell Media.
Now, the great divide for our east and west for our beloved Queen Street starts right here at Yonge and Queen, heading westbound. Since 1894, this Queen Street store between Yonge and Bay Street has been one of Toronto's most important fashion destinations. After years of expansions and renovations, the store is now the proud home of the Hudson's Bay flagship location. Directly across the street is the Toronto Eaton Centre. Now, just down the street here, we find the old City Hall and its Romanesque-style civic building and courthouse, home of Toronto's City Council from 1899 to 1996, and one of the largest civic buildings in North America, constructed of sandstone from the Credit River Valley, which is just blocks down the street from the Rex Hotel Jazz and Blues Bar that's still alive to tell the tale. Since the late 1980s, the Rex has been at the forefront of Toronto's thriving local jazz scene, and hopefully will be for the years to come. Now, some would say this is the nerve center of the neighborhood, home to the cornerstone of Queen Street West's most infamous live venues that dates back to 1861, when it first opened its doors as a blacksmith shop before becoming the legendary Horseshoe Tavern. Of course, we're speaking of Queen and Spadina. Now, until 200 years ago, the Queen and Spadina intersection was still under the title of York and had a population of around 2,000. Spadina is an anglicized version of an Ojibwe word, Ishpadina, meaning a place upon a hill. So it was when British Baldwin built his avenue in the 1820s that the intersection of Queen and Spadina was first created. But one of the most interesting features of Queen and Spadina was in the middle of the intersection, right here beneath the grounds, there laid an actual public washroom, almost like a subway staircase going down the way, right in the middle of the island here on Spadina Street. And by the early 1800s, Toronto started erupting, and by the early 1900s, Queen and Spadina was the center of the city as we know it today. Now behind me, you would know it today, designed by the same architect that designed Casa Loma. The Occidental building was constructed in 1876 to serve the needs of the Toronto Masons. And then it became the Holiday Tavern in 1948 and served as a venue for stage shows, then jazz and R&B musicians, and finally found its place to enjoy a nice cold beer and watch the Toronto local strippers. In the mid-1980s, the Ballinger brothers released the property on a monthly basis and reopened the premises as the Big Bop nightclub and concert hall, which we lost to gentrification. Of course, we're standing right at Queen and Bathurst. The street was named after Henry Bathurst, who organized migration from the British Isles to Canada after the War of 1812. And this area is also very well known for its fabric trade, home decor, and a ton of restaurants and live bars. Parkdale, an ever-changing neighborhood between Ronsonsvale Avenue and Dufferin. The First Nation settlements of the Iroquois, the Mississaugas, the Mohawk, and Huron were the first settlers here. Then in the 1700s, the Europeans moved in, and in around 1720, a French trading post was established at the foot of the Humber River. The actual name Toronto was first applied to a narrow stretch of water between Lake Simcoe and Lake Couchiching. The word anglicized from Mohawk was spelled Toronto and used to describe an area where trees grow in shallow water. 140-year-old in all her glory, Parkdale today is where the backdrop is so diverse. It's a great mix of artists, working class, low-income, high-income residents that's seen its up and downs over the years, but always seems to thrive over the course of time. Now we look at Queen Street West today, integrating out of its third lockdown after a 14 months run with an awful lot of carnage. Since the pandemic started, the ever-changing policies and rules and regulations have been going up and down with a yo-yo effect. It's tough to take a walk through all these neighborhoods, seeing such an overwhelming presence of closed permanently and for lease signs all over the street. We are literally looking at all we have worked and built that forms our identity on Queen Street that has not only been diminishing, but the worst part is the process is irreversible.
In the city of Toronto, there's an estimated 200,000 businesses expected to close due to the pandemic, and the West End neighborhood of Queen West takes up a portion of that number. There are so many that it would literally take ages to mention, but some of these places are along the likes of the Rivoli, Stone's Place, Tennessee Tavern. These places have been cornerstone staple institutions to the city of Toronto. The list goes on forever. It's time to take it to the streets. Now, it's hard to tell the timeline tale of the Queen Street West music scene without the presence of a DJ and producer who's not only worked his way up and down the Queen Street West neighborhood, but also up and down several others across the city. I've had the pleasure of working with them over the years through the fibers of the industry with our contribution to pioneering the rave scene, a Glaswegian transplant that has set many a tone and raised the bar for several music scenes, who's played a very important role with all things Toronto. Of course, I'm speaking about Toronto's resident DJ, Mark Oliver.
My introduction to Queen West was when I was in my early teens, I was just scanning as you did back in the early 80s, you know, on the radio dial.
The wireless?
And I came across this show that just sounded so different to me. And it was Handsome Ned on CKLN.
All right.
And I was just drawn to it. And he was playing a lot of music I'd never heard before. A lot of old country, you know, from the 50s, 40s, and Hank Williams and stuff. And I was just like, wow, this is stuff I've never really been exposed to. Yeah. I've been exposed to a lot of music at that point, and I was heavily into jazz. I was always looking for, just looking for something different from the mainstream. It was years later that I realized Handsome Ned, and I was a DJ here every Wednesday for over 5 years.
Acid Jazz, the infamous
Acid Jazz Wednesday
night.
nights.
Yeah, man.
And I was just chatting with the owner one day, and she was like, yeah, Ned used to play, he played here about 5 years, so totally different scenes. And I'm not comparing myself to Ned at all, but I think Handsome Ned was probably, if you talk to the old heads from the early 80s, they'll probably all tell you that Ned was a big part of what made Queen West. You know, and then the punk scene had sort of died out, and then people were looking for something new. So I think Ned and a bunch of other people on Queen West got a different kind of scene going. And, you know, he influenced obviously Blue Rodeo and Cowboy Junkies.
All those cats.
Yeah, I mean, they were all, I'm sure they would admit to being influenced by Handsome Ned sets. I think he played the matinees here every Saturday right in this room. We're playing all old soul and rare groove music. This is pre-acid jazz. So this was 1986.
Sure.
So we walked up and down Queen Street. We walked into the Holiday Tavern, which was under renovation at the time, Queen and Bathurst. And then 87, that's when I began DJing at Tasmanian Ballroom.
That's right, you started out at the ballroom. I never got to check that out. It was a wee bit before my time.
Jarvis, that was the Summer of Love, second Summer of Love, 1988. And still there was no rare groove scene.
Yeah.
Apart from, we were playing some of it at the ballroom, but Ed and I we were still looking for a venue to play rare groove and pre-acid jazz, but the same vibe. We ended up, we went to the Rex Hotel.
Okay.
Rex was the East End, that was the eastern border, and then the Holiday was sort of the western.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I mean, there was other stuff going, but generally if you were bar hopping,
main artery
you'd
kind
be
of
crawling along from the Horseshoe to
Yeah.
So we ended up over the Rex, brought in a sound system because there was really no sound.
Yeah.
There was a radio, I think.
So you started at the Rex with the acid jazz?
Still wasn't acid jazz, but
Right.
that was
the vibe.
That was ground zero.
What would you have said was a big drive at the time, like for Queen Street when it was first starting to pop? Where was the electricity coming from?
I would say back then it was really about live bands.
Sure.
DJs weren't a thing yet. I think punk was probably the first wave that kind of brought that scene.
The grit for Queen
Yeah,
West.
and of course before that, in the 60s and 70s, there was obviously country at the Horseshoe and soul and lots of great, you know, live music going on.
Tell me about your experience here, man.
So I got the call. Good friend Tom Davis lived up in the corner room there.
Yeah.
A lot of great musicians lived upstairs. Gordy Johnson from Big Sugar, Holly Cole, Molly Johnson. So Tom was living up there singing. He was a model. He had a lot of friends in the fashion industry, and his girlfriend Charmaine, who was part owner, managing the Cameron House at the time. So the two of them, they just, everyone knew them, and they were magnetic, you know. So anyway, Tom asked Charmaine, or they said, let's just do a night. Tom wanted to do his own night on a Wednesday, and he called it Flirty Dancing. I think probably had something to do with that sign. He's like, let's do like Flirty Dancing. You know, it was just kind of quirky, and he brought in originally Heather Lawrence, who was a DJ at the Tasmanian Ballroom. And then after Heather, Malik X came in. Malik had a run for, I guess, a year, or just over a year. And then a couple of months later, Tom rang me and he's like, do you want to come in and do? And I was like, yeah, as long as it's cool with Malik. I was here every single Wednesday. You know, I'd pull up in a Beck taxi here, lug the milk crates. I was usually late, so Tom would be at the door, running out, grabbing the milk crates. Come on, it's packed. You know, everyone's asking where you are and stuff. Run in, just jump on the decks and be there all night. I could start to see some changes, I think, especially when City TV moved to Queen and John.
Yeah.
I mean, they're beaming out nationwide. And with shows like Electric Circus, it was sort of bringing a different crowd altogether down to Queen West.
Now, the Mahones, a world-renowned Irish-Canadian punk outfit, were formed in 1990 and have released over 21 albums. The Mahones' music has appeared in several major films, and they also co-wrote and recorded the title track from the 1996 movie Celtic Pride. And the Mahones album, The Black Irish, won the Independent Music Award for Best Punk Album, and Angels and Devils won Paddy Rock Radio's Album of the Year, as well as the Vandella Concept Album of the Year.
So we have here with us Irish-Canadian world-renowned punk band frontman Finney McConnell from the Mahones. Finney, how are you, buddy?
I'm all right. I'm great.
I haven't seen you since before lockdown.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, my hair is, as you can see, I got my high school hair back. My hair was yours like so short last year.
So long as my hair's been in about 20 years, man. So tell us, man. Now here's an artist like yourself. You've been up and down the dial of Queen Street West. When was your first entrance to the neighborhood? When did you first start to come around here?
The story of me personally or the Mahones?
Let's go with the Mahones.
Okay. We in the 90s. Well, I guess it still is, but in the 90s, this was the strip to play in. Like, you had to break Toronto. And I don't think there's as many clubs as there was, but there's still a lot of good ones, like the Rivoli, the legendary Shoe. There's the Bovine, Cherry Cola. So, we still got 4 or 5 on the strip,
Yeah.
But back in the day, it was all over the place, Yeah. And so we came to town, the Mahones. It was a funny story, actually, our story. We came to town, and our first gig was in an Irish pub called McVeigh's Irish Pub.
McVeigh's Tavern.
McVeigh's Irish Pub. Jimmy gave us a gig. He was friends with my dad, and that's how it happened. So we did the gig, and everybody came. Even Gord Downey from the Hip was there,
Nice.
He's a good friend of ours from Kingston. And so we had a really good crowd. It was a good vibe. So a friend of mine picked up on it. I was working at the Rivoli. And so I got a gig at the Rivoli with another Irish band. What was it called? Tip Splinter, and I love them. Henry, thanks for the gig. So we got there, and we had a solo show there. And of course, X-Ray owned the place at the time, and Kenny, who were good friends of Wally High and Dan Aykroyd from Kingston, where I was from. So I kind of knew them from the K-Town scene.
Boy originally, right?
Kingston high school boy. I was born in Ireland, but I went to school in Kingston.
Yeah.
So that's why I know all these guys. And after the Rivoli show, X-Ray came up to me in the packed house, and he said to me in a total cool X-Ray style, he's like, "Why aren't you playing in my club, Finney?" That's his way of inviting you for a gig, right? It's too cool for school. So I was like, all you have to do is ask. And the next thing, we were at the Shoe. And it happened that fast, 3 gigs. And before long, we were selling out 2 nights at the Shoe. And we got a record deal at the Horseshoe. Label saw us here, and we got a record deal. And so it all happened here. And then we did a live album here, our first live album.
Pretty much the nerve center for you guys.
This was for us guys, yeah. And then we did their 50th anniversary concert. We headlined that in '97. And we had Johnny Faye from the Hip on drums for that one. And in '92, we did Gord Downey from the Hip, his private wedding party here. We were the house band.
How was that?
It was crazy. I never seen Blue Rodeo so drunk in my life. It was so funny. And it was a really, really fun time.
So that was your entrance into the kind of the Queen Street
and
West.
And then my first agent, Jeff Cohen, who was Mahone's first agent, bought the Horseshoe in 2000.
Correct.
Yeah, and it was partner Craig Lasky. So now they run it, and they've had it for 21 years now, I think, or something like that. And now it's getting gentrified, obviously, right?
Sure.
But that's what happens to big cities. It's vibrant.
Yeah.
It's different kinds of music now. There's a lot of electronic and DJs and things now. The kids today are, they use computers and shit.
Would you say that Toronto measures up to the rest of them? Do we swing the same band as the rest of the cities on Queen Street?
We're one of the best in the world.
Sure,
absolutely. Right? We're a very cool city here. We're kind of like a Hamburg, Berlin kind of thing. Pretty cool vibe here. Yeah.
What's probably been one of your most valuable memories of playing out of this joint?
I mean, the Shoe is beautiful. It's the best. Okay, I love all the other venues in Toronto.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but this is the masterpiece venue. Okay, the sound is perfect. The stage is perfect. If you're playing the band on the stage, the sound is perfect. If you make a recording, it's perfect. The sight lines are perfect. Like, it's just one of those special rooms. Very hard to find. I did a double header on New Year's Eve, Millennial, 2000. Okay, so this is my special gig. I've opened up for the Tragedy Hip at the Air Canada Centre. You're in front of 18,000 people there, something like that?
Plus, yeah.
And then I ran over here for a sold-out show, and I headlined the Horseshoe in 1999, 2000. I rolled the clock here. It was me.
Nice.
I'm the last guy to play here before the Sadie's 21-year
Coming off the tail end, opening up for the Hip.
Yeah.
And so here we are inside the legendary Horseshoe Tavern right here at Queen and Spadina with JC. And first and foremost, I want to say thank you very much for donating your time today to come on board.
Oh, anytime. Who doesn't want to talk about one of the more famous live music cultural institutions in the city province? or the country.
How long has the Horseshoe been a part of the Queen Street West neighborhood?
Oh, okay. Well, the original owner, Jack Starr, whose family still owns the building, opened this place up in 1947. And so it just started up as a neighborhood tavern.
Right.
And it had a bit of a bad reputation at the time because not only was it a home for real working class people from Maritimes and Newfoundland, it also became a very much attraction to criminals. So famous bank robbers drank here in the afternoon, and also members of bike gangs. So it got that early reputation as being a bar.
A little bit of rough and tumble.
Right. And the interesting story about this, and it would be, is that apparently after years of drinking in here, the Maritimers and the Newfoundlanders said to the owner, Jack Starr, why don't you allow some music to happen here? And he's like, music? I'm a bar and I serve roast beef. They're like, no, we're really, there's a big culture in the East, like kind of throwing kitchen parties. We just like to throw a kitchen party here, like
that's
at 7
what they
o'clock
call
in
them
the
back
evening.
home, kitchen parties.
Yes, they do. So,
yeah.
So he just okay, go ahead. And they started playing music, and they eventually convinced him about, I'm not even sure the exact date, 54, 55, 56, somewhere in there, to actually build a stage and start actually booking local bands that played traditional Celtic and folk,
kitchen parties-esque kind of stuff.
And traditional Newfoundland
Sure.
Celtic and folk music. And eventually, I don't know how he hooked up with the Garys, but he rented it to them. Every possible American or European or Canadian punk, ska, or alternative band.
Yeah.
They all came through
Talking
here.
Heads, MC5, The Police, The Ramones, everybody.
The list is pretty amazing, and he kept trying to find new people to run the club, but it just wasn't working. At some point, it turned into a strip club called Stagger Lee's.
That's right, yeah.
But he put an ad in some paper looking for someone to drive his car to Florida. And the person who answered the ad was this guy named Kenny Sprackman. The conversation went something like, he went to go pick up the car, and he's a very talkative guy, Kenny, and Kenny would say, hey, what do you do? And he goes, oh, I'm retired. I used to run a live music club. And he goes, oh, I just closed the live music club. And they started talking, and then Kenny goes, oh my God, you own the Horseshoe Tavern. It's like the greatest venue ever. And Jack starts like, not anymore. I can't find anyone to run it. Kenny said, I'll run it for you. But basically the modern day Horseshoe, as we know it, including the modern day system of how bands make money in the city of Toronto, which is previously they got small guarantees and the owner made money off the door. Kenny took everything from Hotel Isabella and changed it, but he instituted something called the band take 100% of the door policy,
Sure.
which had not existed in Toronto
So
previously.
this was his template.
It was his template.
Interesting.
And everything you know about the Horseshoe today came from that era of Kenny and X-Ray. They became, with no offense to the Garys, and no offense to Jack Starr himself, probably the most successful business operators of this venue ever.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of that, you've been holding down the wood, and yourself personally, you play a huge part of the Horseshoe's culture here on Queen Street West. When did you first enter the neighborhood yourself and the institution? When was that around?
I came to Toronto when I was 31. So my introduction to the Horseshoe was simply as a patron, like everybody else.
Sure.
And so I booked other clubs. I booked the Alma Combo twice. I booked Punk Rock and the Apocalypse Club for a couple of years. I started booking all over town, bringing in American punk, ska, and alternative artists. And eventually, they made a change here in the talent buying in 1995, August 1st, 1995. The day Wilco played their first show in Toronto at the Horseshoe Tavern on their very first record, AM. And on that afternoon, me and my assistant, Craig Lasky, who's now the talent buyer here, had an interview with X-Ray and Kenny about coming on as a talent buyer at the Horseshoe.
It's funny enough, my very first entrance into the Queen Street West was in this venue here. I seen the Charlatans UK. I think it was underage. I had a fake ID. This was many moons ago.
Great keyboard sound.
Yeah. Hammond B3 was set up right there on the right side of the stage. It was just unbelievable. Yeah. Now, what night sticks out for you in these holy grounds?
The shows that meant a lot more to me than anyone's are the residencies. Frank Black and the Catholics did 5 nights.
Yeah.
They loaded in their own equipment. They didn't want loaders. Yeah. So Frank puts on his black gloves and just loads using his own equipment. There were secret shows here from the Tragically Hip.
Yeah, they did a lot. And your Rolling Stones came through here as well.
The Rolling Stones gig was pretty amazing, but it was a clusterfuck of all clusterfucks.
It was. How were they for maintenance-wise?
They were fine. They were actually like really simple. The only thing they decided was they cordoned off the whole downstairs bathrooms as their personal dressing rooms.
And Stones-esque, yeah.
So nobody could pee. So unless you went to the front bar. It was like the biggest lineup I've ever seen.
Oh, damn it.
You're probably not aware, but Blue Rodeo had their own record company before they signed to Warner.
I don't know that.
It's called Risque Disc.
Okay.
And its head office was down in the basement of the
Nice. They were playing the Matador and all that back then as well.
They were totally. I could have been at those Matador shows.
Yeah, probably.
I'm old enough to say that.
Me too.
Anyway, the gist would be is I walked in for the interview and they gave us the job before we walked out.
Yeah.
And so I haven't left since.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But what would you say makes the neighborhood such a draw for the city over the years in general? Like what do you think the mystique is? The je ne sais quoi that gets about it?
As soon as you hit Toronto, like this is the area you come to. So the reputation of that particular time, and no offense to the Phoenix or the Siboney, even Massey Hall, there was just a draw that if you wanted to see original live music and Canadian original live music, you were going to go to the Cameron House. You're going to go to the Rivoli. You're going to go to Ultrasound. You're going to go to the Horseshoe. This, and to some degree, if you wanted to meet people and socialize, the Bovine. The two key places where you needed to hang out in the Bovine and you needed to be in the front bar of the Horseshoe.
Now, if you've been into either punk or rockabilly or alternative or anything else outside the musical box, you've been to the Bovine Sex Club. The Bovine has seen anyone who's anyone in the rock and roll world go through their doors. Now, if you went through those doors yourself, chances are you went through an ex-Irish Pat, who's not only at the helm of the front of the house at the Bovine, but also the singer-songwriter for the almighty Trigger Happy and owner of Curse Blessing Records. Of course, I'm speaking of Al Nolan.
What's happening currently in our political climate over the past 3-4 years has literally been a Dead Kennedy's lyric sheet has come to fucking life. In front of your eyes.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like to the point of dictatorships in the White House, white Christians attacking the Capitol. Like, you can't blame heavy metal. Yeah, so every Saturday night on City TV, which used to be down the street, but originally was just right beside that place I mentioned, the Record Peddler, had a show on Saturday nights called The New Music, which was your hour-long portal into anything kind of cool that was from the other side of the Atlantic or down south or anything that was local.
Now, David Mulligan, I believe, wasn't it?
No, he was on the CBC at the time. This is where you got John Roberts, who's now on CNN, and he was known as J.D. Roberts back then.
That's right.
And he was like an entertainment reporter for City TV, along with Jeannie Becker, who became like the fashion mogul, Empire for Fashion Television, and that kind of stuff. They were our weekly guides to culture, to Queen Street, to Iggy Pop, to heavy metal, to punk rock, and that kind of stuff. So when the local scene came about of a store, like I said, the Record Peddler, and somebody alerted me to the fact that there was a fanzine called Metallic Assault, and it was the addresses of the bands were all Toronto postal codes. It's like, wait a minute, hold on, what? Like this whole scene is happening. It's just like, fuck, I need to be part of this.
There's a thriving punk scene around here too.
Yeah, there was huge. So that's what I kind of found. There's a band called Direct Action that just happened to open for a band called Exciter. That was really kind of like a suburban metal kid's kind of first gateway into those kind of bands. And also like punk rock to us at that time, around 84, 83, was still it was a thing for runaways. It was the bad kids music. It was all about what was next.
Yeah.
So the punk rockers at that time had kind of taken on more of a rockabilly thing. When I became a punk rocker, I wanted Black Flag. I didn't really care who Johnny Thunders was.
Yeah.
I didn't really, they were all dying off as far as I was concerned.
Sure.
So I wanted power chords. I wanted that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Thunder,
you know what I mean? And I wanted it to go with urethane and skateboarding.
So would you say then, a lot of people say it's the food, it's the fashion, it's the music. What would you say has always been the draw? What makes this street and this neighborhood shine more than anywhere else in Toronto?
It's a dream to some and a nightmare to others. People come down to ridicule. People come down. It used to be a great place to meet. Like when you go a little more west, it gets even scarier historically.
Yeah.
It used to be called Fuckface City.
Fuckface City.
And I think flat out, people left the city in the 70s, and then the 80s, people came back and they left it again.
Right.
And now it's really exciting to be back in the city again. I don't really like gentrification that much because I'm the first person to physically ache when I see a building that I remember being changed.
Sure.
Like I remember when this was the drugstore.
Yeah.
And even when this was the Horseshoe, like the whole thing was the Horseshoe. But
Bishop the Belcher was right across the street and all that.
Yeah, that's funny too.
Well,
that was down there. That was
That was my first bar tab in the city.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, what I did either something ridiculous or smart. I took everybody else's hopes and dreams. Thank God I still had a good, nice enough reputation with everybody that they trusted me. So I decided to start a record label,
which is Curse Blessings.
Curse Blessings.
So tell me all about this. So you went from the loss of your mother and your father, smack dab into this fucking pandemic, and you've thought to yourself, I'm going to do something. How did you get there?
No, I got sober about 2 years ago too, which was a big process part of this as well. So there was another isolation kind of.
And this is a tough neighborhood to keep fucking sober in too, man. Yeah, man. Yeah.
Stay sober. Yeah. And like I gave up cocaine and drinking about 2.5 years now. So the label just became a thing where I have to provide for someone. I have to take on a leadership role of finding the scene that we have, of just the way I found it. I want to leave it better the way I found it. We came in at the right time. It was the right injection of hope. Sure. In a really shitty time. Because a lot of bands were going to break up. Yeah. Like they didn't know what they were going to do. Like if you can't play, okay, if we can't play, what are we going to do? Al needs to do a record. Okay, cool. Let's write a record. Let's do this. Let's fucking get in and get that going. At least it gave them something to work towards. And if we were still going to be in a lockdown, at least they'll have something in stock, right? And then if we get let loose to go play again, which looks like we're going to be able to do in about a month or so, God willing, they'll have something fucking ready to go with to put on the table to sell off the States. Per usual, I don't know why if Ontario, like we get this riff, and Toronto especially, we get this rap of acting like we're the most important thing in all of Canada, but we're always the last to open, we're always the last to have the weed stores, we're always the last to have this, we're always the last
That's
to have
kind of true, yeah.
It's like, what the fuck, dude? I don't they're doing better out there than we are.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, I want to say thank you I know you're a busy guy. I want to say thanks a lot for taking all your valuable time to come down here today.
I'm sorry I kept you waiting.
No, not at all. And with Curse Blessing Records and everything you're doing and all your artists that are on your label, I want to wish you all the best.
Thanks,
love,
bro.
luck, and health, man.
Good.
For sure. Good to see you, man. Thank you. Now, with all the temporary closures on the Queen Street West clubs and bars, this has left the owners without any source of revenue. Without the clubs being active, this has left the DJs without any platform to play and simply out of a gig. But this also has a trickle-down effect to the other most important member in all of these rooms, and in my eyes, one of the most underrated in the venues who play such an important role in what the evening or the band and the DJs are going to sound like. And that, of course, is the sound engineers. These are skilled artists who these rooms hire to roll with the DJs in the booths and make sure that the sound system is finely tuned as possible, and to help the technical matters as the DJs play their sets and switch equipment out, with an overall goal to make the live band sound the best that they possibly can so that you can get your rocks off in these live musical venues. Odds are half of them are recording and producing engineers as well. Now, the person that has been responsible for making sure the majority of these top venues in the Queen Street West neighborhood have been purring like a kitten would be none other than Brian Ireland.
I moved to the city when I was 18, and I lived at Queen and Shaw and then Queen and Noble, and just kind of been back and forth as far as the living is concerned. When it comes to the sort of sound side of it, probably here. That used to be the Social. I DJ'd for a number of years before I got into doing sound. I had a kid when I was very young, so I ended up having to make some actual money. You know, as Queen Street's grown, used to be desolate. There was nobody around. So yeah, it has in a good way in some cases, and in other cases we've lost some of those buildings, like the 48 Able that I used to live in, and there used to be incredible parties in there.
Yeah.
We used to throw them as well. So, but yeah, Queen Street it's always just been electric because of the arts, I think, and because of it was the thing where things happened first. I think I was 14 or 15 when I was living in Newmarket at the time, and a bunch of us in that area decided that we would travel to the city to listen to some house music. So 1087 was just called 1087 at the time. It was like there's a party there, house music, chance to listen to it. There's not a ton of venues in Newmarket to go listen to house music. So we came to the city, and this was one of the spots, and it's a great spot.
And so here we are at the corner of Queen and Dovercourt at the Great Hall 1087, with such an enriched, long history of entertaining for the city of Toronto. Tell me, when did you first come here?
Yeah, it was a long time ago, man. I think you and I probably heard at the same time. There used to be a warehouse party lot that you could check out some house music, right? So I was about 14 years old, which is dating myself 30 plus years ago. And it was a lot of fun. One of the only places you could really go, like one of this, and there's a few other venues that were doing it, but warehouse parties were where it was at when you could listen to house music. So
I can remember myself, this was one of the first warehouse parties I ever came to in Toronto. I think it was Peter Tyrone and Shams, just before the rave scene.
It was,
Toronto was just starting to cut his chops and get on the world stage a little bit with house music. This was the venue. Now, you had a bit of experience working in here with the sound, but you also had your own studio upstairs as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, so I did a couple of gigs here back in the day before they did the renovations, which look amazing at the moment. Put in a new PA. Mark Foster is the guy who's done that, but production manager behind it. Did a great job. But my studio, I moved in here. Nav, you guys all know Nav Sagna. He's
I worked for Nav down here.
DJ, been in the scene. Yeah, he's a wonderful man, and he got me into the space as far as put my studio in here. So I was here for about 3 years, and a bit bittersweet. Had to move on to another space because of the pandemic and the cost and all of those things. But yeah,
this is your new space you're talking about.
Yeah, just at 6 Noble Street, which we'll head over and check it out. Yeah.
Let's head over.
All right.
So here we are, Audio Crisp.
Welcome.
So tell me then, we just moved over from 1087 over to here. Now, was the call to change venues, was that due to the pandemic with finances?
It was, yeah, unfortunately. There's a few reasons, but the pandemic triggered it, and the ownership was new ownership at 1087, and they weren't very communicative, and I was a bit panicky, not having any work anymore. Had to do something. So I was lucky that the people here, Esther and Triffin, had a space, and I managed to get a hold of them pretty quick and moved when I was able.
So now you've lost your source of revenue through the live events and whatnot. Now, in the recording world, for people that don't know what's going on out there, how's the traffic flow being with artists that are wanting to record right now?
I mean, you have to say it's non-existent. You can't really have people in the studio. There's periods of time when we went into lockdown. I also record some voiceover stuff for people, and they were coming to me pretty regularly, and I was like, I can't have you in my space. So from a legal perspective, the building had to sort of be shut down except for the people that were necessary to be here. So it's hurt a lot of people, and it's been a difficult time for studio owners and for obviously for live events as well.
A lot of recording engineers like yourself and studio artists, they're trying different things. And from what I can see, anyway, from what I'm gathering, is people are now they're not in the same rooms and they're doing a lot of recordings online and stuff.
Yeah, it's a common practice now. It's like, and the industry has adjusted. There's been new software made. Beat Connect is one that I use. There's a few of them out there that allow you to connect your digital audio workstation with somebody else's, and you can write music together in different places, which I've been doing with a few different people, and it works. It's not the same, It's not the same as being in a room with somebody and vibing and kind of having a good time and enjoying it. But at least you can still write. So it's not gone completely, but it's much different than it used to be.
So would you say it loses a little bit of its je ne sais quoi?
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah.
So with that being said, I had this conversation with somebody else with regards to same with film as well. So as a whole, when we look at it, would you not say maybe, just maybe, this might have an effect on the quality of entertainment with regards to products such as watered down film, or maybe less quality?
I think maybe perhaps. Maybe? I think that a lot of that comes down to the talent, and if you're good enough at what you do, then you're going to end up getting a good product still. I do think that there's something to be said about the creativity being missing, and that's going to affect certainly the end product in the long run. But
because the juju's spread out.
It's just different, right? It's like the funny thing is, I've probably written the best music of my life since we've been in lockdown.
Oh, is that lovely? So you thrived as an artist.
I thrive probably because of the time I put into it. I think that's a big part of it, but also just because the energy that you get from going through a difficult time. People end up writing some of the best music when things are difficult, right? So protest music, you could use it as an example, but it's been good for me in some cases. But I miss sitting in a room with somebody and them picking up a guitar and me picking up the keys or writing some beats and just creating something on the fly. That's a thing that, especially recently, I've been just like, come on, let's get through this.
Pre-pandemic, with regards to gentrification, we've seen an awful lot of changes come and go. What changes have you seen? Like, what have you seen with the vibe, just pre-pandemic?
I think the biggest thing is the rents have gotten crazy in the area and sort of forcing out a lot of mom and pop businesses. So I think whenever you have the attitude of making the most money, you have a scene that's not going to continue.
That's not gonna last.
So I think the Horseshoe's been very lucky to have a family who does want to see market rates here, but are willing to lower it to make sure that the Horseshoe can stay in business. Yeah, I don't want to diss other landlords, but part of the business problem has been in the pandemic in the city of Toronto is that the independent business person is supposed to take a hit. The customer's taking a hit because they might have lost their job or not be able to do the sales they did before. But somehow landlords have got this idea that they're not supposed to take a hit.
Sad.
And somehow politicians, same with banks, and somehow politicians haven't been able to convince the banks and the landlords that they're supposed to contribute to this whole thing to keep the engine going. So, shame on landlords.
It's a short-term investment, I see.
Some landlords deserve to have empty spaces.
But I ain't back down or feel intimidated, and I ain't have to bluff. I was holding all the aces.
Well, from your world, from working in the rooms and stuff like that, you're out of work. How does that feel? How's the impact been on you?
Oh, I gotta say, it's been brutal, man. I've lost probably 90% of my paid work, and I've adjusted, and I'm doing some online stuff, and some of my clients are still giving me work, but it's I'm working Zoom calls.
Right.
I'm not doing audio. I'm not mixing a room. I'm not doing corporate event stuff. I think people are going to be particularly careful. I think it's going to take a long time for everybody to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Even when you get a vaccine, like we've gotten our first, so we're 80% covered for the most part. But I still feel the fear myself, even of just being in public venues with a ton of people. I don't trust everybody, and I don't think anybody ever does, right?
What's it been like for you as an artist and a musician going through the pandemic and not having an audience? What's it been like, man? I mean, because we hear from different industries. What was it like from your sake?
A lot of musicians would probably hate me for saying this, but I worked hard my ass off and made 4 albums in lockdown.
Really?
So, yeah, and released 4 albums. What I did was I went through my archives, and my archives are huge. I've recorded every band I've been in. So one of the first bands I was in was called The Filters, and it was me and Gord Downie from The Hip in Kingston.
Right.
We were like Dr. Feelgood.
Right.
Maximum R&B. Down. So we were working on those tapes. I brought those out. 40 years old. I got like 121 songs of me and Gord Downie in my band.
No way.
Oh yeah. You wouldn't believe the stuff I recorded.
When things open up again, we're obviously going to have to stick to the legal capacity, and there won't be any play with it. So, and for good reason. I mean, obviously everyone's health is of optimal.
Of course.
But venues are going to have to change. I mean, we're going to need to see bigger venues with more space.
Now, with all the bans and the rules and regulations, is the Horseshoe going to be okay? Are we going to pass the storm?
The Horseshoe is financially stable. Both the Horseshoe and Lee's are extremely stable.
Good. As this is part of the culture and part of the heritage of the city as well, surely they recognize this stuff.
Sure,
right?
they do. And so everyone, the 3 levels of government, I know everyone's got bad things to say about government, and you can certainly say some bad things about government policy during COVID, but at the end of the day, all 3 levels of government, whether you voted for them or didn't vote for them or liked them or you're dogmatically against them or like them, they have come through. Good. For this venue. And they've kept this venue alive. This venue is not going anywhere.
But I know I can speak on behalf of all the live music loving and industry people in the city of Toronto when I say we're looking forward to you guys getting the doors back open in full swing. And I want to take this opportunity to say thank you very much for your time today. And we wish you guys nothing but the best of love, luck, and health.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure being with you today.
Cool.
Thank you.
Anytime.
By the time you're watching this documentary, the streets are open again for another shot at integration. For the past 15 months, big box stores all across the country have been showing record high profits, and it's time to flick the switch. If there was ever a time and place for us to be channeling our revenue in the right direction and making conscious decisions, it's right now. Coming up in part 2 of The Queen is Dead, we're going to be shining the light on how the pandemic has had a crippling effect on a variety of businesses and the locals that call Queen Street West home.
The group that I'm representing is Occupy Common Ground. This is an affinity group from Occupy Toronto that is reforming to address the housing crisis.
From COVID to encampments, we are here to advocate for members, fight for members, fight against taxes.
We've been in market since 2015, but rocking and rolling since 2017 on Queen Street West here.
The vaccines have been rolling out and we are getting the green lights
Now, to stop the rest of the closures to these existing businesses that are holding on for dear life, it's on us as Torontonians to get out there and support all these local independent businesses and support all these venues and all the artists. Because all you have to do is take one look around here in the Queen Street West neighborhood and realize an awful lot of it's already gone and we cannot afford to lose of it anymore. For Black Donnelly Media, you've been watching Taking It to the Streets. The Queen is dead. May good juju find you.